Imagine trying to track a planet orbiting the sun using your standard XY grid. I'll tell you right now, your math is going to get miserably complicated. Forget the grid. We need something better to map the geometry of the universe.
Think about it. Planets are in constant motion, right? An X and Y grid totally fails us here because it only tracks fixed left, right, and up-down positions. What we actually need is to find an object's exact, instantaneous position relative to a center point. That is exactly the real-world problem polar graphs solve, and it's why figuring them out is just absolutely crucial.
So, in the polar coordinate system, we literally just throw x and y out the window. Instead, we use r for the radial distance from the pole, or, the sun in our analogy, and theta for the angle. Think of it like standing in the middle of a giant field, turning to face a specific direction and walking out a certain number of steps. That's polar coordinates in a nutshell.
By the end of this lecture, you'll completely understand the concepts, the formulas, and how to actually draw these shapes. We'll tackle this in 5 quick steps. 1. The symmetry toolkit. 2. Finding zeros and maxima. 3. Circles and cardioids. 4. Limaçons and lemniscates. And 5. Rose curves and spirals.
All right, let's dive into part 1, the symmetry toolkit.
Before we start drawing those really cool, beautiful curves, we've got to build our mathematical toolkit. First up, symmetry. Symmetry is honestly just like folding your graph perfectly in half. If the ink matches on both sides, boom, it's symmetrical. Mathematically, we test this by running 3 quick substitutions. For the y-axis, you just replace your coordinates with -r and -theta. To check the x-axis or polar axis, use r and -theta. And for origin symmetry, swap in -r and theta. If your equation doesn't change at all after plugging those in, congrats, you've officially proven your graph is symmetric. Now you might be asking yourself, wait, what happens if an equation actually fails one of these tests? Does that automatically mean the shape is totally lopsided? I see students fall into this trap all the time. The answer is a hard no. Failing a symmetry test doesn't necessarily mean your graph lacks symmetry. It literally just means the test failed to prove it mathematically on the first try. You still have to plot your points to confirm what's actually happening. So never let a failed test trick you into assuming there's zero symmetry. Always double check.
Moving right along to section 2, finding zeros and maxima.
Now that we've got the basic idea of symmetry down, let's grab our next tools, finding exactly where the graph hits the origin and figuring out where it reaches its absolute widest point. Finding zeros basically anchors your shape at the pole. All you got to do is set r to 0 and solve the algebra for theta. Super simple. On the flip side, the maxima gives us our farthest boundary edge. To find this maximum distance, you just look for the exact angle where your sine or cosine function peaks at exactly 1 or -1. This tells you exactly how far out into space your planet, or, your graph, is going to stretch. Okay, section 3, circles and cardioids. Let's look at some basic curves. We've got our toolkit locked and loaded, so let's actually apply it, starting with a classic, the circle. The formula is beautifully simple. It's just r equals a times cosine theta or a times sine theta. That is it. In this formula, the letter a represents the total diameter. So if a is 4, your circle will have a diameter of 4, stretching precisely that many units away from the pole. Make sense?
But what happens if we tweak that formula just a little bit by adding a second constant? We get a cardioid. As the name kind of suggests, this is a heart-shaped curve. The formula becomes r equals a plus or minus b cosine theta. And this brilliantly shows how just a tiny mathematical ratio changes the entire geometry. When the ratio of a over b perfectly equals 1, the curve tucks right back in and passes beautifully straight through the pole, creating that iconic heart shape.
Which brings us to section 4, Limaçons and lemniscates.
Let's kick things up a notch and move away from the simple heart. Fun fact, limaçon is actually Old French for snail, and the shape absolutely fits. Check out this comparison here. Over on the left, we have the one-loop limaçon. This happens when the ratio of a over b is between 1 and 2, which gives us this dimpled, sort of convex outer boundary. But look at the right side. If a is strictly less than b, the curve pushes so aggressively into the origin that it crosses the pole twice. It actually loops back inside itself to form an inner loop limaçon. Pretty wild, right?
Next up in the complex curves department is the lemniscate. You probably know this as the classic figure 8 or the infinity symbol. The core formula involves an r squared equal to a squared times the cosine or sine of 2 theta. What's absolutely incredible about the lemniscate is the sheer level of symmetry.
Because of those squared terms, a lemniscate can boast symmetry across the origin, the polar axis, and the y-axis, literally all at the exact same time.
Wait, this is super important. I really want to pause here because this is a massive trick you'll want to remember. When you're trying to find the zeros of a lemniscate, you're dealing with 2 theta trapped inside a trig function. Please, do not make the careless algebra mistake of trying to solve it all in your head. Just substitute the letter u for 2 theta, solve for u first, and then simply divide by 2 at the very end. It's a foolproof way to prevent those nasty little calculation errors.
All right, final stretch. Section 5, rows, curves, and spirals.
For our final application, we're going to explore the absolute most intricate, mesmerizing flower-like patterns in the entire polar system. Rose curves literally look like multi-petal flowers blooming right on your graph. The formula is r equals a times cosine of n theta. I want you to focus heavily on that multiplier n tucked inside the parentheses. That little n is the secret mathematical key because it exclusively dictates the petal count of your rows.
So here's the crucial odd-even rule for n. If n is an even number, say 4, you multiply it by 2. Your curve is going to have 8 petals. But if n is an odd number, like 5, the petal count doesn't double at all. It is simply n. A rose curve with n equals 5 has exactly 5 petals. It's a fascinating, kind of magical quirk of the polar grid. Finally, we swing from complex petals back to the ultimate brilliant simplicity of the real world, the Archimedes spiral. Discovered over 2 millennia ago, the formula is quite literally just r equals theta. That is it. As the angle theta increases, the distance r increases at the exact same constant rate, producing an ever-widening infinite spiral.
Let's make this even easier by looking directly at the data. Notice what happens as the angle theta rotates to pi over 4. Our distance r is about 0.785. As the angle sweeps further to pi over 2, the distance grows exactly proportionately to 1.57. At pi, it hits 3.14. Step by step, the point just pushes evenly outwards from the center. It's just simple, perfect geometry.
Okay, before we finish up this lecture, let's quickly summarize the key takeaways. You now possess the mathematical toolkit to test for symmetry, anchor your shapes with zeros, and find absolute boundaries using maxima. You know how to track basic forms like circles and cardioids, manipulate ratios to form looped Limaçons and lemniscates, and decode the complex n rules of rose curves and infinite spirals.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. If polar coordinates can elegantly map these beautiful, complex curves on a flat 2D plane using nothing but distance and angle, how might these exact same rules behave if we injected a third dimension? What happens in a 3D space? Well, that introduces the wild world of cylindrical and spherical coordinates, which is exactly the level of calculus we're going to tackle in our next explainer.